This is the France 24 debate. We're discussing the situation in Syria with Hassan Hashimi. He's joining us from Istanbul, where the Syrian National Council has just been formed. Hassan Hashimi, how do you describe yourself? Are you a Muslim Brotherhood? Are you independent? What's your affiliation, as it were?
No, I'm an independent with the council.
Okay. Also with us here in the studio, Bassam Bitar, who is a Syrian dissident who lives in Virginia. And I guess you could say the old guard, since you've been in opposition since 1987.
Exactly.
And from the University of Oklahoma, Joshua Landis, author of SyriaComment.com. And with us as well, Laurie Dundon, of the Partnership for a Secure America. Thank you for being back with us as well. We were talking just before the break, and maybe a final comment on this. Bassam Bitar, you heard Hassan Hashimi say that the Muslim Brotherhood and the Islamists in general account for less than a third of the seats inside the Syrian National Council. Your thoughts on that?
My personal opinion, they are overrepresented, to be honest to you, because between the Islamist and the Muslim Brotherhood, and let's call some group they create, they are division, because the Muslim Brotherhood by itself, they divide for 3 different divisions now, and everyone is fighting for more presence in this group, in the SNC. But we're going to work together, and we're going to correct the whole situation, the whole problem. I know they are overrepresented, because they have more than 10% of the seat. And in Syria, the Muslim Brotherhood, they don't have even 5% of the population.
Joshua Landis, do you want to weigh in on this and tell us what you think?
Well, it's a crucial question. And U.S. support for the Syrian opposition hinges on this to a certain extent. Stephen Heidemann of the U.S. Institute of Peace, the vice president there, an important think tank in Washington that has been covering the Syria question carefully, wrote after the September 15th, when the last National Council was announced. He said that the United States did not recognize it, and that was largely because there were too many Muslim brothers on the council, they felt. And I think that getting Burhan Ghaliun, who is made some fairly strong statements against Islamists in the past, a professor in France, and secular, has been very important. Getting him to be the spokesperson, at least initially, for this is very important. We don't know who is going to be at the head of the executive committee, and obviously that's a wrangle that's going on now amongst the this new council. So we'll see. But that's one of the big questions, and foreign support is going to depend, to a certain degree, U.S. support will depend on how much authority the Muslim Brothers seem to have in the opposition.
Laurie Dundon, your thoughts on this, especially when you look at the situation, the way it's unfolding in Libya?
Well, I think you see this complication of waiting for the message of all of the groups to come under one tent, and yet the urgency both for individuals inside the country and outside actors to determine what they're able to do. So part of the message, I would commenting on what they just announced yesterday of a civil pluralistic state, that helps the international community mobilize. In part, it's a goal that's easier to support than some of the issues that are trickier that Joshua just mentioned. And also, in part, it finally gives a clear message from a unified group to say, that's what they're asking for. It's not us going in and demanding this is what they do. Because you have to walk a very fine line in Libya, in Egypt, and in many of the other cases where the outside powers, the U.S. and others, have to both be active and involved and yet step behind what the Syrian people want.
All right, not be too much in the fore. A minute ago, Joshua Landis mentioning that Burhan Ghaliun is the person who's at the microphone, at least for now. Burhan Ghaliun, who said that, yes, the Syrian National Council, it's true that it is in exile. It's not inside the country, but it is well connected and tuned into what's going on. That's not the feeling shared by one member of one of the local councils in the Damascus area that France 24 contacted earlier in the day. For safety reasons, we've blurred his image Take a listen.
It's a virtual national council. There is nothing on the ground. They don't have offices. They don't have representatives here inside Syria. Most of the people, they are living abroad. They said they omit the names of the Syrians who are living inside country for security reasons. No, these names should be published and everybody should know it. You know, you need to gain more trust from people in the street, the people who went out to demonstrate or to protest. Otherwise, what you are doing is just something virtual. As a Syrian, I only got hope for this council. I don't want them to be involved in useless debates. They should focus on building a new future for the country.
Okay, so Hassan Hashimi, you heard what that member of a local council has to say. He sees you sort of as, for now, as a virtual council. Maybe to prove him wrong, how close contact are you with the various local councils that are across the country?
The SNC was working very closely with all the groups inside Syria and was able to bring support from the majority of the groups inside Syria. However, I would like to draw the attention here while talking about the SNC and this whole project that we went through, that I think there was a real challenge while building the SNC that I think the Syrians were able to change it into our advantage. And that is the birth of the SNC as a project that will work on the political front. Something that the Egyptians haven't achieved yet until today. They were blessed by getting rid of their dictatorship in 18 days. The Tunisians also got their work in the revolution done first, and now they are working on their political project. So I think in our scenario, we were pressured to work on our political project in parallel with the work going on in the streets of Syria, and that was a real challenge, was a real pressure on and big responsibility on our shoulders. And we say that today we have this NC. We say that it is not a perfect project. It's not 100% perfect, but it has a very big support. We claim that it's not a parliament in order to really kind of be overwhelmed by thinking of the representation of every single city, or although all cities were represented. But I mean, when it comes to the very details of it, we need always to remember that this is not a parliament. This is a national council that will work to represent the Syrian people only to get rid of this dictatorship and get rid of the regime. And this is not a transitional council as well. This council will change afterwards into a transitional council where probably more work on the political front, if needed, can be done. However, even in the National Council, we have said yesterday that they're still open for any representation that we are still working on, or if even we were not aware of.
Okay, so in other words, it's still an ongoing thing. The question is also, and one that was put up we touched on a little bit in part one when Joshua Landis mentioned the fact that there's more and more people in the opposition answering fire with fire, soldiers who've deserted. The question is being overtaken by events, you could say, inside the country. Now, in the magazine Foreign Policy, Robin Yassin Kassab has penned, the author of the novel The Road from Damascus, has penned an article entitled Is Syrian Civil War a Self-Fulfilling Prophecy?, where he points out that armed groups like the Khaled bin al-Walid Battalion and the Ali bin Abi Talib Battalion have declared their existence. These forces are relatively strong in Idlib province, as Jabal al-Zawiya, and in towns around Homs. We can perhaps call up a map that shows some of the hot spots inside of Syria. And when you take a look at that map, and look at it right there, Bassam Bitar, when you look at the map in front of you and you see those hotspots, there it is.
Okay.
What are your thoughts in terms of, is it becoming an armed resistance already?
I can say the demonstration is still an arm. The only defector military, who this military people, they have conscience, who they have their own arm, they use it against the Syrian regime or the Syrian military, you know. So actually in the street, in our street, our demonstrators, they have strictly nothing, you know. Probably some knife, probably some baton, probably something like that, but they are unarmed till today. You know, I don't see anything, and nobody have any confirmation from any way we have any arm in the street. Like I said, the only arm come with this defector who really, they have some conscience and they don't want to continue with the Syrian regime to kill the Syrian people, because this weapon wasn't bought for this purpose, was bought to defend Syria, not to kill the Syrian people, because that the taxpayer money who they purchased this weapon.
Joshua Landis, at what point do you call it a civil war?
You know, that's very hard to say. The government is still in charge of Syria and dominates the scene by the use of force. But increasingly, the opposition is getting arms. And we're seeing in the last several weeks, we've seen almost every day some prominent Alawite doctor or scientist. We just saw the son of the Grand Mufti, Sunni, killed, and another university professor killed this weekend. So there are revenge killings going on now against regime supporters, Alawites, other people who are associated with the regime, like the Grand Mufti, who's from Aleppo. And that kind of violence is picking up its pace, and people are out there, they're looking for targets, and they're going to kill them. And we're going to see, I think, a lot more of that before this is over. Already on this National Council, people like Radwan Ziadeh in Washington and others have said that the majority of the people on the council want foreign military intervention. On the National Council's website, its blog website that they put up, there are maps of Syria's aerial defense and so forth, trying to prepare the way. Somebody has put up there for a possible, NATO no-fly zone over Syria. So that's the big debate. The big debate on the council will be, now the council has said that they want peace and they don't want a military intervention, but there are many people on the council who do. And there are many people in Syria, increasingly, that are calling for foreign intervention to stop the Syrian military from killing protesters. And so we'll see where that debate goes, but increasingly, the opposition is getting armed.
We can illustrate that debate now. For instance, on Twitter, Razan writes, "I am against NATO in Syria. I will never ask for Iraq and Afghanistan occupiers and criminals to save me from another criminal." While veteran dissident Michel Quilot also opposes outside intervention, he sees armed struggle, though, as a way of falling into a trap by Assad, a divide and rule sectarian trap. Let's take a listen.
Foreign intervention means that Syria will enter the violence of its sectarian conflict with weapons. We inside are against violence, against sectarianism and weapons.
But over the weekend, and this feeds into what Joshua Landis was just saying, when the Reuters news agency sat down with some of the thousands of refugees who fled to the Lebanese border town of Wadi Khaled, they found a lot of people rooting for a Libya-like scenario.
The only way is intervention. The regime will not fall unless there is intervention, or at least a no-fly zone. Now they are bombing our families in Syria with warplanes. If there isn't a no-fly zone or an intervention attacking Syrian military sites, the regime will never fall, because they have everything in their hands. The regime is still strong, and it controls everything. The Syrians who are here will not go back until the regime falls.
Hassan Hashimi, what would you say to that refugee?
Let me clarify the position of the SNC on this topic. Of course, let me start by saying that I'm not a spokesperson of the SNC, but however, as a member of the council, our view of the international intervention and the military solution, we have called, or we have said that in our warnings to the regime to stop the brutality, that we are leaving the possibilities and the doors open for a solution that will enable us to protect the civilians. However, we are very cautious not to call for a military intervention, and definitely not the Libyan scenario or the Iraqi scenario. I would like to remind everybody that in a Libyan scenario where the military was a lot weaker, very flat terrain, and can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Yes, yeah, okay. Where the terrain is very flat, the army is a lot weaker, and the Arab world support came in few days. International community reacted right away. NATO was there in no time, and it took them 6 months, 30,000 casualties. It was such a solution, a costly solution, and human lives, and that we definitely don't want.
So it's not the same scenario. I just want to. I'm sorry. I'm going to cut you off, Hassan Hashimi, because we're almost out of. Hassan Hashimi, we're almost out of time. I just want to briefly go around.
I can't hear you actually.
I was just saying I want to briefly go around the room. Bassam Bitar, you agree?
I agree for military intervention. We have to stop the blood in the street of Syria.
So the outside world has to help.
Exactly.
Challenge is what can be done on the international side when there's such an intervention exhaustion. Libya has kind of pushed us even further, and as much as countries may want to help, what can they do? And there's a real risk if we get out there in terms of promises that we can't deliver on, and the Syrian people are depending on that type of support.
All right, and we're going to leave it there. A situation that continues to unfold. I want to thank you, Laurie Dundon, for joining us. I want to thank you as well, Hassan Hashimi. Apologies for the technical snafus there, joining you, linking up with Istanbul, where the Syrian National Council has been meeting. I want to thank as well Joshua Landis for joining us from the University of Oklahoma, and you, Bassam Bitar, and thank you for being with us here in the France 24 debate. Stay with us. Coming up next, it's time for Business, that's hosted by Marcus Cross.